Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an Australian cattle dog named Bodhi. Bodhi the Australian cattle dog lived on a huge farmland where he was responsible for herding the cattle every day to their grazing grounds and back home. He took his responsibilities very seriously, making sure that the cattle were safe, happy, and well cared for. He was also a very smart dog who loved to figure out how to take care of the different problems that would come up every day around the farm. Every morning, as the sun peeked over the hills, Bodhi the Australian cattle dog would come out of his cozy kennel, ready for the day and to make sure the cattle were taken care of. "It's time to get up and go," he'd say, with his bark echoing across the whole ranch. And with a playful skip in his step, Bodhi would set off on his daily rounds, herding the cattle with great skill and focus. The cattle loved Bodhi and felt safe around him. On one particular day, as Bodhi led the cattle to the watering hole where all the water troughs were lined up and filled with water for the cattle to drink, he noticed something strange. What was usually clear water in the troughs were now murky and yucky smelling. "Uh-oh, this doesn't look good," Bodhi said to himself. "Actually, it doesn't smell good. Ugh." Concerned for the cattle, Bodhi the Australian cattle dog sprang into action. He sniffed around the troughs. He knew every inch of the ranch, so he wanted to figure out what that smell was and why he felt like something was wrong. And then he saw it. Possum hair and footprints on the ground behind the water troughs. It was the family of possums that have been giving Bodhi the Australian cattle dog trouble before. And they came back, and they were using the water troughs and leaving behind a mess. Bodhi the Australian cattle dog once caught the possums before. They were drinking and washing themselves in the water trough. If the cattle drank that water, you never know. One of them could get sick. Bodhi knew he had to act fast to solve the problem. So, to protect the cattle from drinking any of the contaminated water, Bodhi got to the cattle just in time before they all got into their water drinking lines, and he blocked the way for the cattle to go any further. Bodhi the Australian cattle dog said, "Hey, I'm going to have to stop all of you from drinking right now. Some possums have been playing in the water, and I have to make sure everything is okay before you all drink from the troughs." And he led them away from the water. One of the cattle asked, "Where should we go for a drink?" Bodhi replied to the cattle, "I got an idea. Just follow me." And as he was leading the cattle, Bodhi remembered a nearby stream. And so he led all the cattle to the stream, where the water was clean and clear. And once the cattle got to the stream, they all went to drink the clean water. And as the cattle drank from the cool stream, Bodhi the Australian cattle dog was able to finally relax. For now. But he knew he couldn't let those possums ruin the watering hole again. So Bodhi set off with a new plan to keep the possums away from the watering hole. He had to think of a plan to keep the critters out without causing them harm. So he started walking back and forth, thinking of different ideas. And then he remembered a trick an old wise farm cat once taught him. And with a newfound excitement, he began collecting sticks and branches from around the area. The cattle were confused at what Bodhi was doing. But after a while, Bodhi the Australian cattle dog gathered a bunch of sticks and piled them on the ground. He then stuck the sticks into the ground, making them stand up out of the ground. And he placed the sticks in the ground all around the watering hole. And the sticks went all around all of the water troughs. Bodhi ran back to the barn and grabbed some unused rope, and he walked around the watering hole, weaving the rope in between the sticks around the whole area, creating a fence. It wasn't much of a fence, but Bodhi the Australian cattle dog hoped that it would help to keep the possums away. Bodhi knew that a simple fence wouldn't be enough, so he thought of a second way to make sure the possums got the message that they were not welcome there. So once the fence was in place, Bodhi dug a series of small holes in the ground all around the fence, and he buried some of his favorite doggy squeaky toys in them, and he covered the holes with leaves and branches. His thought was that if the fence wouldn't scare the possums away, maybe one of them would accidentally drop into one of these small holes, and the doggy squeaky toy would scare them away. And so after he covered up all his holes with leaves and branches, all he could do is hope for the best and wait to see if the possums will come back or not. And so, right as it got dark and the moon was shining bright in the night sky, the possums crept out from their hiding spots and they got closer to the water troughs. And as they approached the watering hole, they were met with a surprise. A strange fence made of sticks and branches surrounding the whole area. One of the possums said to the rest, "We come here all the time. I've never seen this here before. Let's turn back and go home. I think whoever owns all this water is telling us to stay out. Yeah." Confused and startled by the fence, they all agreed. So they turned back and started heading out. But right after they took a few steps, the biggest possum in the group fell into one of the small holes with Bodhi's doggy toy in it, and it squeaked, and then it scared all the possums away, and they scampered away into the night. The next morning, Bodhi the Australian cattle dog went to check the watering hole and was glad to see that the possums didn't return. But for some reason, he had a feeling that something was still not right. The water was fine. The possums were gone. "I wonder what's wrong today," said Bodhi to himself. And as he started making his rounds, checking on the cattle and making sure everything was in order, he saw it. It was a group of crows. They had come down into the ranch and started being mean to the cattle and the other animals. They would swoop down and peck at the cattle's feeding trough, and they were messing around with the tools outside of the barn. Bodhi thought fast. He knew he had to act fast to protect the ranch and the animals from these pests. But how? And right when Bodhi the Australian cattle dog was about to run towards the crows to scare them, he stopped, and suddenly an idea came to him. He remembered the farmers taking down a scarecrow after the last rain season. Bodhi then ran toward the old scarecrow that was behind the barn in a shed. The crows were back on the farm because the farmers forgot to put the scarecrow back up. Bodhi the Australian cattle dog opened the shed and found the scarecrow. So Bodhi grabbed the scarecrow with his mouth and ran back to the feeding troughs and lifted the scarecrow up and leaned it on the side of a fence so it could stay standing up. And once all the crows saw the scarecrow, the crows all got scared and flew away in the frenzy. And Bodhi the Australian cattle dog said, "Get away from here, crows!" And the cattle and all the farm animals cheered. And Bodhi the Australian cattle dog said to all the cattle, "Come on in, bovine buddies. There's no more crows messing with your food." And all the cattle came back and were able to eat their food. And after a long day's work, Bodhi went back to his kennel, with peace in his mind, knowing that he was able to do his job well that day and take care of the cattle. But the truth was, he couldn't wait to wake up the next day to do it all over again. And the Australian cattle dog lived happily ever after. The end. The Australian cattle dog, or simply cattle dog, is a breed of dog developed in Australia for herding cattle. The Australian cattle dog is a breed of blue Merle collie and dingo. They're also nicknamed red heeler or blue heeler. They can also be called Queensland heelers. The Australian cattle dog is a muscular, sturdy, and compact dog that has a broad skull with a medium-length muzzle. Their ears are pricked up to a medium size and set wide apart. Their neck and shoulders are strong and muscular, and their front legs are straight and parallel. Australian cattle dogs are normally either red or blue, and they could have speckled colors all over and white markings with a black patch or mask on one or both sides of their face around their eye. Australian cattle dogs have a short coat that protects them from the sun and rain, and their tails are usually long and bushy. The Australian cattle dog can be from 17 to 20 inches tall at the shoulder and can weigh from 40 to 55 pounds. Australian cattle dogs are really good at herding animals, and they're really intelligent too. Australian cattle dogs have a special trait from their dingo ancestry called heeling, where they nip at the heels of cattle to lead and guide them. Have you seen a real-life Australian cattle dog before? If you have, where did you see it? Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, bye! If your child enjoys cats, drawing, or writing, you might also like my Everyday Cats Journals. They're a 4-book journal series, each with fun covers showing cats with human bodies doing silly and everyday things. Inside, kids can look for little objects from the cover that appear in the top corners of the pages and try to find them all as they write or doodle. The Everyday Cats Journals are available on Amazon. You can find all the details in the show notes.